All right, fantastic. Please let them know who you are.
Hi, I'm Maureen Bosetti, the Chief Investment Officer at IPG Mediabrands.
Amazing. Thank you, Maureen, for joining us,
Yeah.
and thank you for being part of the panel. Panel's wrapped. Any immediate thoughts about the conversation?
I thought it was a good conversation. I think we covered a wide array of topics regarding the upfront. You know, there's a lot of chaos out there, and it's complex and more complex than it's ever been. So I think we covered, again, a good amount of topics and got different points of view on what we should expect in this upfront.
From the audience, it felt like there was more alignment than sort of conflicting points of view. Did you feel the same too?
I thought so too.
We're talking about the upfronts, and that means, content. We heard a lot about live sports and live entertainment coming back. What is content? What content makes you and your family happy? What are you watching? What's good?
Well, I watch a lot of a combination of, really interesting streaming programs like The White Lotus or the documentary of the trial of Karen Reed. So I really love documentaries.
Okay.
And then you could go to reality shows, but obviously at the center of what most of my family comes around is sports, whether it's soccer from my husband or football. Obviously I did March Madness, all of that. I think really sports is probably at the center of what we all come together around.
The gravitational pull for the family, and that's why it was a gravitational pull
Exactly.
for the marketers and the agencies that represent them.
Exactly.
Makes a ton of sense. So a lot of digital natives in the room, upfront conversation, digital natives think new front, they don't know what rate of change is. Hot tip, just means lower prices.
Or higher prices if
it's a different type of year.
Change, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. How do you think about new front? What do these words mean to you? New front, upfront. What's your take?
Now I think new front has really become a lot of, primarily whether it's streaming partners or social. So the TikToks, Snapchats are going to be more prevalent during those weeks, or premium online video partners like Condé Nast. So that historically has been really dominated by digital, and then the traditional upfront partners were a few weeks later. But there's a lot of now blurring of lines because Amazon is now during the upfront week. Netflix is during the upfront week. YouTube is during upfront week. So it's become blurred, right? But we still call it
previously?
Yeah.
Those three?
Well, Amazon was. I mean, I think parts of Amazon were, and then they've recently, because they've become this big sort of traditional, the streaming, they've moved themselves into the upfront week. So it's been interesting to see how some of those partners have put themselves in that week, because that tends to be the week where we get much more attendance now. Clients, we're still seeing a lot of clients come into town and pretty good attendance during upfront week. So
I mean, flexibility was the theme for the panel tonight, with how media is placed and sort of put across different buying types and fluidity between who's in upfront, who's in new front.
Right.
But thanks for sketching it for our audience.
Yes.
Getting your wisdom is always helpful to everyone. That sort of fluidity is also, I think, extending out towards content consumption, right? Maybe you want to watch some short video in the elevator. It's a short ride. You're on the subway. Please use your headphones, everyone. Or you're on the big glass pulling down whatever you want from any provider who now has an app on the corner of the screen. Or, you're out and you just can't miss that sports thing. The consumers are fragmenting how they're pulling in the content. How is that changing, addressing them in the journey, right? We heard a lot about the funnel is dead from the panel. Sure, collapse, dead, gone, shortcut. But it's changing. I'm curious what your perspective is, how just best practice for how brands and marketers should think about addressing this sort of fragmented content ecosystem.
Well, I think you have to understand what problem you're trying to solve, right? What barriers are you trying to overcome to drive growth or retention of your products? So I think you really have to understand those challenges, right? So do you need to drive more consideration? Is that a key lever that you have to pull? Do you have to drive more advocacy, right? Do you have to drive more loyalty? So it's kind of understanding, it's not about a funnel. I think it's really understanding what are those levers that you're trying to need to pull, what's going to drive the most growth for you. And those levers could look very different by client. And then once you kind of understand what those objectives are, then you start to build, well, which channels and tactics can help me increase my penetration against those tactics best. But it really starts with diagnosing, where's your growth going to come from, and what are the objectives that you're trying to focus on to drive that growth. Because to your point, there's so many different options that we have. that diagnosis is really, really critical when you're dealing with clients, so that ultimately you can pull that through all the way to your channel planning, your partner planning, and your tactics.
Got it. And so addressability, you've talked about like where they are, whether they're loyalty or they need consideration. What are y'all doing at IPG to make the addressability aspect of that kind of come to life?
Well, I think for us, it's really starts with Axiom. Because we have the Axiom ID, we can get that data, that first-party data for our clients, so that we can then generate an Axiom ID, and we're able to really leverage that through many of our partners, right? Where we can create those high match rates and pull that all the way through to activation and measurement. So that's really our point of differentiation, right? To make sure that we're leveraging Axiom and utilizing that from a planning perspective, again, activation and measurement. And so that's really key to our solution.
Fantastic. I promise this to be a light interview. That was a little bit of a heavy question. I apologize.
Yes.
A lot of information. Thank you for sharing it. Upfront, it's coming. Is there anything you're looking forward to? Any sort of like light moment?
I'm always I do look forward to the upfronts, because like I said, we get a lot of clients in town. It's a time when we all come together as an industry. So I really enjoy the upfronts. I love to see, love to see what new programming is coming out. I always thought I could be a really good programmer. So I really love seeing that. And I still look forward to it every year. And now it's just more of it, because now we get streaming shows and primetime shows and even cable shows sometimes. So I love seeing all that content, and I get really excited about that.
I love it. You heard it here first. Maureen wants to program if possible. This feels like, KCRW, volunteer, donate. You can do an hour on the radio, pick your music. Anyone, bring Maureen in. She'd be glad to plan an afternoon or a night on your channel. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Andrew.